uh, uh, useful. We'll see. So let me start by saying when we last were together, since I wasn't here for the political commentary last week, we are recording, right? Okay. When we last saw Esther, her demeanor was changing in the story. Prior to chapter 4, she might be described as passive. She participated, some might even say, as a courtesan or a concubine. Greetings. Come on. Pretty well. And you?
Remember this?
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks. I appreciate it. And in chapter 4, we find that Esther's starting to find her voice. She's starting to apprehend her responsibility and her power. One might say, if she became queen as a teenager, she was practicing her adulting up until chapter 4, and she was coming into her own after that. And just as a PSA, this particular class has a PG-14 mature audiences rating. So I'm going to read this passage to you, and keep in mind that most historians believe that Esther was taking place in Susa under the reign of Xerxes. So this chap lived about 150 years after Xerxes' reign. He's Greek, and he was fascinated by the Persians. So during his time in Sardis, Xerxes had fallen passionately in love with Mecystus's wife, who was also there. When his message failed to win her over, he was prevented by the respect he felt for Mecystus as his brother from forcing himself on her, a consideration that also served to strengthen the resolve of the woman herself, well aware that she would not be raped. Finally, with every other option exhausted, Xerxes arranged for his own son Darius to marry the daughter of Mecystus and his wife, in the expectation that such a step would improve his own chances of getting his hands on the woman. He duly betrothed the couple, completed the customary marital rites, and sped off to Susa. However, after he had arrived and brought Darius's wife into his house, he had a change of heart, and he dropped Mecystus's wife in favor of his own daughter, the wife of Darius, a passion which he brought to consummation. And the name of that woman was Artanite. In time, the whole business came out in the following manner. Amarystus, Xerxes' wife, wove him a wonderful cloak, sweeping and beautifully brightly colored as a gift. Delighted, he put it on and headed off to Artanite. And after she too had given him great pleasure, he told her to ask whatever she wanted in exchange for the services that she had rendered him. Demand and you shall receive. It was then, because Artanite and her entire house was fated to come to a terrible end, that she said to Xerxes, "You will really give me whatever I request?" He, never for a moment guessing what she would actually demand, promised on his oath. Whereupon she, now that he had sworn, coolly asked him for his cloak. This set Xerxes racking his brain. He really did not want to give Artanite the cloak, for the simple reason that he was afraid Amestris, who already had her suspicions about what he was up to, would rumble what was going on. He offered Artanite cities, exhaustible supplies of gold, and even sole commission of her own army, a classic Persian gift. But still, she would not be swayed. So he gave her the cloak. Artanite, ecstatic at being presented with such a present, then sported it in a mood of triumph. The fact that she had possessed the cloak soon came to the attention of Amestris. However, rather than bear a grudge against the woman herself, when informed what she was up to, Amestris presumed the responsibility for what was going on lay instead with the mother, the wife of Mesistus, and she plotted her destruction. Amestris bided her time until Xerxes, her husband, was celebrating at a banquet that was held every year to mark the royal birthday, and which is known to the Persians as, meaning in Greek, complete. On this one occasion, when the king anoints his head, and he also he hands out gifts to the Persians. So Amestris waited for the day to come around, and when it did, he asked Xerxes to give her Mesistus's wife. Now, to Xerxes, the thought of handing over his brother's wife was shocking and appalling, and all the more so because she was perfectly innocent in the matter. He had grasped, you see, what lay behind Amestris's request. So implacable was the wife, though, and so binding on him the custom that no request course of the royal banquet be refused to anyone, that he did eventually, albeit with reluctance, give Amestris a nod, and made her a present of the woman. Do with her what you will, Xerxes ordered, and then sent for his brother Mesistus. He said, not only are you the son of Darius and my own brother, but you are a good man as well, and being so, divorce your current wife. I give you in her stead the hand of my daughter. Marry her. For the one you have now, she does not seem good to me. Dispose of her. Mesistus was astonished by these words. Oh, master, he said, what an unconscionable thing to say. Divorce my wife and marry your daughter? These are serious. Are these seriously your orders? The mother of my children, my young sons and my daughters, the one whom you have given in marriage to your own son, a woman with whom I am perfectly compatible. Most honored though I am, O king, to be thought worthy of your daughter, yet I will not marry her, nor will I divorce my wife. Please do not resort to compulsion concerning this matter. Some other man will emerge no less worthy of your daughter than myself. As for me, please let me continue to live with my wife. But the answer put Xerxes into a fury. This is how it is with you, Mesistus, he says. Not a moment more will you remain married to your wife. And on top of that, I withdraw the gift I made of my daughter's hand. That will teach you to accept what you are offered. And when Mesistus heard this, he said only, well, master, at least for now, you have not killed me. And then he walked out. Meanwhile, at the same time as this exchange between Xerxes and his brother was taking place, Amestris had summoned Xerxes' bodyguard and brutally mutilated Mesistus' wife. She hacked off the woman's breasts and threw them to the dogs. She cut off her nose, her ears, and her lips and her tongue. And only once she was terribly disfigured did Amestus send her home. Of this, Mesistus had as yet heard nothing, but expected that something terrible had happened. He came into his house at a run immediately, and he saw his maimed wife. He took counsel with his children, and he set off for Batracia, and his sons, and various others, no doubt, with the aim of raising the province of Batracia in revolt and inflicting as much damage on the king as he could. Indeed, I imagine that is exactly what would have happened had he only made it up to the land of the Batracians and Skane without being intercepted. He was very popular with them, you see, and was the governor of the Batracians. Xerxes, however, was informed of what he was doing, dispatched a squad of soldiers who killed Mesistus and his children while they were still on the road, and their other men with them. Such was the story of the grand passion of Xerxes and the death of his brother Mesistus. A little light reading if you want to pick up the book, but that's the court that Esther is living in. That's her husband. So we go on. I think that whole story, keep it in mind as we talk today. So when we left, Esther We left her, as I said, finding her own. Her demeanor was shifting. I made some statements the last class that we were together, um, pointing out that when Esther told Mordecai that if she were to go to the king, that it would endanger her life and that he had to raise his scepter or lower his scepter in order for her to, and if he didn't, she would die. And oftentimes it's interpreted, and I've read commentaries where people are saying she's scolding him, she's informing him, but Mordecai knew this. I mean, if you read the text carefully, he was not. It's, that face is up there for a reason. He was like, duh. However, I don't believe that that's what she was doing. I think she was sending a message to Mordecai, and I think she was sending him a message that's saying that she had a plan, but that her plan was very dangerous. And I think that he got that message about her strategy, and he said to her, "It's worth the risk because you're going to die anyway." And then he made that famous statement, right, for such a time as this, right? And he makes reference to her becoming royalty for such a time as this. Again, by way of review, we asked a lot of questions early on. That I've just sort of written them all down. There are 13 of them. I've crossed off the ones that I feel like we've dealt with a little bit. We have gone through the part of the story that address questions 7 and 8, but we really didn't talk about them in detail, and we'll come back to those. I just highlighted them in blue. And today I want to address this question number 5. Why does Esther wait twice to make her request to the king? And so this is our outline for today. I've sort of divided this particular class into 9 scenes, 3 for each chapter. I'd like to go through them. I'll highlight some of the things that stood out to me, and then I'd like to discuss each of those scenes together. So here we are. Esther has decided that she's going to approach the king, and it says that she had a 3-day fast, if you remember. And it says on the 3rd day she got up, she washed herself up, she got dressed in her royal robes, and she goes out to the inner court outside of the king's hall. It says in verse 4, I think, that the king lowers his scepter. And it also says, I think it reads, "What is troubling you?" And I thought that was interesting because clearly the king senses that something is wrong with Esther. And I went and asked, I dug into it a little bit to try and find out where does that come from, right? Like, he could have just said, "What's up? What do you need?" But he didn't. He said, "What is troubling you?" And that is contained within the specific word in the original language that's used for the question, "What?" And it's used when there is clearly something disturbing about the person being asked. And I've got a couple of references, but we won't look at them today. And then I've always found it interesting when the king in this story says, "You can have up to half my kingdom." I don't know, at your age, how much you have, but that's half of what you have. No matter how little or much you have, is a lot. And I think I've always found it like, is this hyperbolic? I mean, what are we talking about? But then when you read the passage I read earlier, like, I'll give you your own army, I'll give you a city, I'll give you unending supplies of gold. I mean, this is just not where I live. But He clearly feels strongly about Esther, and he offers her half of his kingdom. And I promised, you've probably all forgotten, but I promised the next time we got together, the last time we were together, that we would play a game. And so now it's game time. So the game is, what would you do? So your life is threatened. Your national ethnic relatives are threatened by a king who has the power to make good on that threat. And you have risked your life to come before the king. And he says, I'll give you up to half of my kingdom. Like everything west of the Mississippi could be yours. What are you going to ask for? What would you ask for if you were in this situation? Get into Esther's shoes. Yeah. Okay. So, save my people? What else might you ask for? What's that? She doesn't want the kingdom, she wants that. Right, right. Just like whatever her name was, Artonite. She just wanted the pretty cloak, right? Just buy me some new clothes. Forget the cities and the gold. So anybody else got a different request? What about who's the enemy? Isn't there an enemy in this story? What role does he have? What's his relationship with the king? Second in command. Top advisor. So, you could ask for, sparing the Jews, but is the threat gone? Anybody want to play Esther and ask for something else? You get up to half the kingdom.
I feel like it just makes sense. Like the priorities are in the correct place, given like the history of the Jewish people, right? Like I feel like it should be very clear to them. And like reading the Old Testament up to Esther, like it's very clear, like vengeance and revenge and like getting even like really isn't your place, right? Like that's something that God deals with, right? Like he struck people down dead out of nowhere, right? Like I don't really think anyone wants to mess with that. So like you do what you can and you leave the rest to God who's supposed to handle it. Right? Like it's not like he's not gonna go in and be like, hello, give me his head on a platter, which like someone else does in the Bible, right? Like that's just crazy. Like I feel like they know better than that.
Okay. All right. So this has been a fun round of this game. Save the Jews. Leave Haman alone. I'm not going to ask for any kind of revenge. What does she actually ask for? Yeah. Hey, will you? It says banquet. Um, the literal translation of the word used there is drinking fest. It says, "Will you come to my party?" She didn't. She actually doesn't say, "Will you come to my party?" Right? What does she say? She invites two things that stood out to me. One is she uses a formal tone with the king. She doesn't come in and say, "Honey, could we do X, Y, Z?" Right? She's not like somebody holding their children, in the White House, letting them crawl all over them. I mean, she has a certain amount of decorum that she is practicing here within the context, even though she's familiar with this man. She says, if it pleases the king, right? And then she says, could you and Haman come to a banquet? But then, even beyond that, there's a grammatical error in what's written there. But a lot of English translations make an interpretation and take the grammatical error out. She says, um, will you and Haman come and join me in the banquet that I have prepared for him? Do you hear what's wrong with that? Where is it written? I can't remember the verse. Verse 4? Somebody want to read that?
Esther said, if it pleases the king, may the king and Haman come this day to the banquet that I have prepared for him.
Yes, thank you. And that's the way it reads. What's wrong with that sentence? How many people are coming? 2. How many people does she say she prepared it for? 1. Okay. Just keep that in the back of your mind. So, they go to the banquet. She says she already prepared it. And it appears as though the king is very enthusiastic about this drinking party with his wife. Because what does he do? He says to his servants, his eunuchs, go get Haman. There's a party. Come on, let's go, right? And it says they drank their wine, and then the king repeats his offer to Esther a second time, up to half the kingdom. Round 2. What are you going to do? What would you do? Now you're sitting there. Maybe this is you're sitting there. This is a nod towards the American justice system where everyone has the right to face their accuser, right? Now Haman's present. She's not going behind his back. He's there. The king's there. They've all had at least some to drink, maybe some too much, who knows? The Persians were known to be indulgent in their drinking fests.
Part of it could be that originally when she was one-on-one with Cersei, that being offered up to half, she wanted Haman to be there when he said it again, to let him know that whatever I asked for, I could take you out of power.
Interesting.
Not necessarily by death, but just in power in general.
Right. So, what are you going to do?
I think she does something really smart in building her character. Like, I think when, like, I was a kid and, like, they were teaching this story, we were like, oh, like, yeah, she's probably scared. She, like, was scared to ask and she put it off. But the more that I read and studied about it, like, this is all, like, very purposeful and intentional and, like, for good reason, right? She's, like, investing time into this. Like, if you're a king, people come to you and ask for things all day long. They want to use you for whatever you can give them, and then they want to go off and discard you, right? And like that hurts his little frail ego. And and so like, that's why he like can, if he doesn't like let you in, then like you're dead, right? That makes him feel better. But I think she's purposefully spending time with him. She's creating like this kind of relational context where it's not like, hi, I'm coming to you for something purely transactional, like give me this, I want this.
Oh, you mean with her husband?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also like having Haman there is another level of like, I don't know, like interesting psychologically, I think, because she gives him the benefit of the doubt by inviting him, right? Like, she's like, okay, like maybe he has some misconception, maybe this, that, the other, right? Like, gives the benefit of the doubt and gives him the opportunity to change.
So what's that's an interesting point. So what are you going to ask? What are you going to ask the king? Still haven't gotten an answer on that one. That's what I mean. That's can't move forward in the game. No more rounds until we hear at least one request.
Let me have another party so I can get you more drunk.
How many times do you think the king's going to make this offer to her? I mean, I can tell you that we read that passage out of Herodotus. For those of you who were here at the beginning, this is a cruel and unforgiving environment. He offered me up to half his kingdom. I took a risk. I could have died before I ever got to make the request. He offered me up to half his kingdom, and I said, let's have a drink. And we have this drink, and he says again, what's troubling you? What do you need? What's your request? For me, I think I'd want to make the request straight away. I may not get another chance. He may get irritated with me. He may not come to another banquet. He may say, I've had it with you, woman. If I can't get you to tell me what you want, I'm done. It's over. I'd want to get in there and put my request in, save the Jews, withdraw the order, please.
That's what I'm saying, though. The fact that she doesn't do that is the reason he keeps offering.
But she can't be sure of that. She can't be sure he's going to make that offer again, right?
Well, I think that she's smart enough to know how to go about this, right? Like, is this person in a position of power, right? Like, she's not stupid by any means.
I agree
There
100%.
is, like,
But she did tell her dad / cousin, I could die, right? She said, there's a lot of risk to what I'm doing. And what does she do? She makes another request that is a little different than the first one. What does she say?
I feel like that ensures her safety, though. Yeah, she's like spent.
Okay, I understand what you think. I'm just asking, what would you ask for, right? What would you ask for? Would you have asked for another banquet?
Yeah, I think it's smart.
Okay, and how does she ask for it? Somebody read that particular verse. I think it's like,
7.
yeah.
Then Esther answered, my wish and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my wish and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come to the feast that I will prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do as the king said.
Okay, so this is a different request, isn't it? I would like to prepare another feast that I've prepared for them. I will prepare for them. So all of a sudden, it's changed. All right? Now, let me give you a little context and then ask a question. If you know that your spouse is upset, I know that not a lot of you are married, but your spouse is upset, you want to do whatever you can to help them. And every time you ask to talk about it, your spouse says, can you and this other person come drinking with me and we'll talk about it? And the first time you say, would you and this other person come to a banquet, to a drinking party that I prepared for him? And the second time you say, would you guys come again to another drinking party that I've prepared for you guys? Now, that's what the king's hearing. And what would you be thinking in your head?
As the king?
Yeah.
I'd be kind of pissed.
Yeah.
Tell me what's wrong.
Yeah.
What's going on?
About what? And what is really pissing you off?
Well, I mean, I just made this huge, grandiose offer, knowing that my family has killed people for this.
Twice.
And then I make this grandiose offer a second time without getting the.
And I'm not getting any information, right? Okay. What else? Okay, so I'll tell you as somebody who's married, if my wife kept inviting me to have a private soiree with, her and I and alcohol, and she kept inviting another man to come along, I would also be pissed. I would be questioning what's happening here. Xerxes was trying to sleep with his sister's wife, or his brother's wife, right? At the beginning of this class. And he abandoned that to sleep with his daughter-in-law. Okay?
Was that supposed to be on the same time as Esther? Or was that before her or after?
Oh, we don't know. It's really, really hard to know, right? So,
He probably wouldn't have cared then. He's like, well, if you're gonna sleep with him, kill you, done with it. Find a new wife, have another baby.
so I think
Doesn't touch the ego. The ego's up here.
I think
right?
Esther is actually doing this deliberately, and I think this is very dangerous play. Because what happens if the king finds out that his spouse is in fact messing around with somebody else? You got time to wait for another banquet? I'll yank you out of bed tonight, and we'll just cut both of your heads off, right? Okay, so she asks for another drinking bro. Haman, don't you love him? I made him. And so Haman starts to go home, and he gets upset because Mordecai won't bow down to him, right? And Haman gets enraged. He's got an anger management problem. It comes out again. And then Haman, this is a interesting thing that happens here in verse 10. He's really angry, and he calls his friends. Now, this is consistent, actually, with, I think it's Proverbs 15. The wise man has many counselors. He calls his friends to tell him how mad he is. Now, I don't necessarily agree with what he says. What does he say? He sits down with his wife and his friends, and he tells them all about his power and prestige. He tells them about how much money he has in his bank account. He tells them about how many kids he has. He tells them that he just got invited to this banquet with the queen, and that tomorrow he's got a second invitation. I mean, who does that? Now, there is some wisdom in actually making yourself known to your friends, right? And it does seem that they have a culture for that, but I found that very interesting. But Haman is a glutton for honor and glory. He can't get enough. He's got an insatiable hubris. And so the first time, I think it's in verse 10, Haman calls for his friends and his wife, and he talks to them. But in verse 14, it says that the advice he gets comes from his wife and his friends. And I think that's there to emphasize the fact that his wife is leading, has a real role to play in this, and she gets called by name multiple times. And I think that's just an interesting observation. And she gives him they give him 3 points of advice. The first one is build a gallows 75 feet tall. The second is, in the morning, go ask the king to have Mordecai hanged. And the third is, tomorrow night, go to the banquet with Esther and the king with joy in your heart. Now let me ask you another question. Why does it take until now for Haman to realize that he could just kill Mordecai? Like, this is second in command, right? This is the chief advisor to the king. And his skin is crawling. He cannot let go of this. And yet now he's like, oh, I could just go ask the king to kill him.
What wasn't his idea? I think he knows that he could do that. He's just having too much fun with his like psychological warfare games.
I don't know if he's having fun anymore.
Well, now he's not because the tables got turned, but that's also because he got range baited.
Well,
So now he's gonna lash out. Now he's like, well, I guess I will go kill him. Right?
Well, if we-
I was having fun with my games, but you're gonna play games with me. Like that's not allowed.
Well, but this game's been being played for a long time, right? I mean, it's been going on for over a year. And Mordecai never is willing to sort of get up and bow down to Haman. So he sees this every day coming and going, whenever he comes in and out of the palace. But if you go back to chapter 3, when it writes it as though Haman is trying to keep up a front as though he's more noble than he is, right? It didn't satisfy him to just kill Mordecai. He wanted to wipe out the entire nation. And he couched it to the king as though there was an existential threat to the empire, and he was going to help the king take care of this. And so it's almost like it's beneath me for me, just with my ego, to just go kill one guy just because I don't like him, because he won't bow down to me. That's the way it seems to me.
Question for you.
Uh-huh.
Even though up until almost this point, Esther hasn't identified herself as a Jew,
Right.
but Haman knows that Mordecai is a Jew and Esther's related to Mordecai. Did he know that?
Yeah, this is why people say this can't be a true story. This is like, yeah, we kind of addressed that. Is this true? Is this not true? We don't really know. How do you keep that secret a secret? I mean, Mordecai is like a father to Esther, but I don't know how to answer that question. But so we have to accept the fact that as it's presented, he does not know, right? So king can't sleep. Now, why might the king not be able to sleep?
Because he was drinking enough wine.
Well, yeah, I mean, I might be running through the conversations I'd had a couple of days ago, and I might be asking myself things like, did I hear her say a banquet I prepared for him? Or did I mishear that? And if she did say that, who's him? Is it for me? Or is it for that other him? I mean, and I might ask myself, why is Haman getting these invitations? And I might be asking, why is she so troubled and why won't she talk to me about it? And is she troubled because she's carrying on with Haman? I mean, is that what's bothering her? And is she bringing him in for moral support? Are they going to tell me something together? These are just some questions I might be asking myself if this was my wife and I had gone through these things. And then he asks, he gets this guy to read to him, and he finds out about Mordecai just by coincidence. He can't sleep just by coincidence. They open the book to the time that Mordecai saved him, and the king asks, what honor or advancement has been shown to Mordecai? And the answer is none. And then he says, who's in the court? Now, that question is interesting because we get the impression that the king can't make a decision on his own. Everything that happens, he's got to talk to his advisors about it, right? I mean, the queen won't come to me. What should we do about that? Over it, it's going to create a national crisis. Over and over and over, he's talking to his advisors. Is he asking because he heard something? Or is he asking because he needs to get some advice? Who can I ask? Who's in the palace right now? I think he heard something. And I think he heard this guy who sneaks up on him. Now, this is kind of crazy, okay? This actually, I might offer some evidence that Haman might have himself way out of perspective. He's going to the king in the middle of the night. It says the king couldn't sleep. So we don't have to, it's not like, oh, it's just evening. It's not like 8 o'clock at night. I mean, it's the middle of the night, right? He's already built a 75-foot gallows after he talked to his friends and his wife, right? And let me just run back to the palace and talk to the king. It's the middle of the night, and it says he went to speak to the king. It didn't say he went to get permission from the king, right? And they do seem to have a pretty close relationship, because in the middle of the night, when Haman shows up, the king says, send him in. And the king's in his bedchamber, right? So they do seem to have a pretty close relationship. Now, let me just ask, by way of reminder, Zeresh was Haman's wife. When did she and the friends tell Haman to go see the king?
In the morning.
In the morning. Okay, so there's some irony, there's some comedy going on here. This is sort of the peak of the comedy of errors that happens in these two chapters. Both men want to talk about honor, right? I mean, Haman has come to talk to the king about how he is not being honored by Mordecai. And what does the king want to talk about? He wants to talk about honoring Mordecai. He seems to be pretty excited about it. But he does not say, as he did to his eunuch that was reading to him, what honor and advancement has been shown to Mordecai. He doesn't say the same thing when Haman comes in. He only says to Haman, what should I do for somebody that I want to honor? Not advancement. And there isn't really no advancement, right, for Haman. There's nothing there. It's interesting that gets left out. And what does Haman say? And why is it so questionable? Haman asks for a lot of things. In some ways, Haman almost potentially builds a case against himself. What does he ask for? What does he tell the king to do for somebody that the king wants to? Yeah, it is whatever he wants, but there are some pretty unique things about what he asks for.
I
Right?
want the things that you had and used.
Yeah. I want your clothes. I want your horse. I want the highest nobles in the land to dress me. I want the highest nobles in the land to walk me through the city square and cry out that I am honored. And that's a little weird, right? Like,
Who wants to be identified as
ding, 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 ding. That's that's risky, right? That's pretty risky. I want the horse that you've ridden on. I want the robes that you've worn. And I want the noble princes, the highest in the land, to walk me around. Now, what's interesting is the author uses this technique where it's no longer a narrator, right? I mean, we've got Haman's thoughts. It's not even what he's saying. We're inside his head. And he says, who else could the king possibly want to honor? Right? Now, Xerxes may not know Haman's thoughts like we do, and so he may not hear the suggestions the way that we've heard them. But I would suggest that he might connect them in chapter 7. So very quickly, we'll look at this this last scene in chapter 6 and then get into chapter 7 in the next 10 minutes. So Haman has to hurry, 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 go honor Mordecai. I mean, I don't even know what to say. If I was Haman, I don't know if I'd just vomit right there in the king's bedroom or what I would do. But I think he's pretty, he's got to be upset, right? This is a guy who is just gets
Especially since he said Mordecai the Jew.
right. So Haman goes home and he tells his wife. Now this is again, I go back to Proverbs 15 and the wise man who has many counselors. Haman calls his friends to tell them about how humiliated he was. I mean, I could stand to grow a little bit more in that. I could stand to be a little bit more vulnerable to my friends and let them know what I'm going through. And now, interestingly enough, in these last few verses of chapter 6, Haman's friends are relabeled. What are they called?
His advisors.
Is it? Is that what it says in your text?
His advisors and his wife said to him.
Yeah, advisors. They've become advisors and wise men, and then they make a prophecy, a rather ominous portent that comes along, and they tell Haman he's already begun to fall, and his wife says, "You will lose because Mordecai is Jewish," right? And then. And then he gets hastily brought by the eunuchs to the next drinking party. Now, again, I get back to this, we spent a lot of time early on in the class talking about literary style and about how this is kind of a masterpiece. But I don't know if you've noticed, but we've been hurrying through these chapters for some time. It started when Esther said, "I've prepared a banquet for him." And what did the king say? "Hurry, hurry, go get Haman. We got a party to go to." And then he can't sleep the next night, and he tells Haman, I want to glorify Mordecai." And what does the king say to Haman?
Hurry, hurry, go glorify him.
Hurry, hurry, go do everything that you said, that you thought would be useful. And then, and now this third time, we've got hurry, hurry. We've got the second party to go to. And then we can't forget that, the advice was wait until the morning and go to the king and ask if you can kill Mordecai. But what does Haman do? Hurry, hurry, I can't wait. I have to go tonight. I'm going to the king tonight. That sense of urgency that is injected into the story is building tension. It's creating a drama that is rapidly unfolding, leading up to the climax of chapter 7. And so we turn to 7, the big reveal. So the third time that they get together, Esther is offered half the kingdom. And how does she answer this time? What's that? I don't think that's what she says. She says something else first.
If you found favor with me.
Right, my life. That's interesting, I thought. I mean, what do our Christian ethics say? What do your parents say when you're a child? Others first. That's not what she says. She says, spare my life, right? Well, that's an interesting point, isn't it? She's playing him. And I mean, if you're married to someone, you love them, and you're in the midst of this, she's very troubled, he's very troubled, your spouse is extremely troubled, and comes to you, and you have the ability to make a change. And finally, after these 2 days or 3 days that have passed, your spouse says, my life has been threatened. How much of what else comes after that are you listening to? I suggested that there was a reason why Mordecai asked her to keep her identity secret. And do you remember when we talked about that? What did I suggest? Come on, you guys remember. I know you do.
So as not to have favor.
So she wouldn't have favoritism, right? I mean, like, it seems that when Xerxes came to power, he was trying to consolidate an empire that was full of some rebellion. And we don't know, but maybe Vashti was Jewish, or maybe she was from Babylon. And he had just spent 3 years putting down rebellions, and she was not willing to participate in that festival and come before him and show off her beauty. And I suggested that Xerxes, when he looked for a new wife, was looking for a mother Persia, for somebody who didn't have divided allegiances. And now we find that Esther, she still didn't reveal that she's Jewish, right? She said, save my life, save my people. Well, the king might ask, what people? I didn't know you had people. What people are you talking about? And I guess the next question that I have, which is Esther's life really at risk? I mean, first, it really doesn't, because, like, what people? Like, if Haman doesn't know she's Jewish, and if the king doesn't know she's Jewish, she could just stay quiet, right? I mean, and even if they did know, she's married to the king, and he seems to really like her, because 3 times he's offered half of his kingdom to her. Just write an exemption. So, so then she goes through this argument that I think has been misinterpreted. She says, we have been sold, which is reference to the gold or the silver that Haman offered to the king, to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated, right? She says, if we'd just been sold into slavery, it wouldn't be worth your time. Now, I have read so many commentaries that say this was Esther just putting together a counterfactual as a foil to try and highlight how big their threat really was. But I think that this particular rhetoric that she goes through is actually a bigger part of her strategy. Because when you talk about slavery, people being sold into slavery, we're not talking, she didn't say, I've been sold into slavery. She didn't say my family's been sold into slavery. She didn't say a person has been sold into slavery. She said, what did she say? My people, right? So when you think about the concept of slavery or a bondsmanship, within Near Eastern ancient Persian Empire. This is the same as a conquered people who pledge fealty to a sovereign or to a ruler. They are, in fact, bondswomen.